Welcome to Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. You are going to hear the stories from the eclectic life of a guy who is a professional counselor, a family man, a SWAT team chaplain, outdoor enthusiast, a guy involved with ropes, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, a chaotic Jedi, and who is a recipient of an honorary doctorate from the University of Adversity. Using these stories, we take the facts lead to concepts, and from the concepts we make a variety of life applications. Just a caveat about the facts. Most of the time we will tell you the facts just the way it happened, but once in a while we'll give you the facts the way other people remember how it happened, and that usually includes a tablespoon of embellishment. No harm is meant, just good, clean fun for educational purposes. Please subscribe and share this with your friends or your enemies. It might help them to be better people if they listen. As always, we thank you for keeping up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Introducing the Bible degree with digital ministry. Paul used the marketplace and the synagogue to reach an expanded audience. We have access to the internet and social media. I once heard it said that when McDonald's introduced the drive-thru window, they did not change the Big Mac, only how it was delivered. Faulkner University is now offering a new digital ministry track for their Bible degree. Faulkner's degree provides training in understanding and teaching the gospel, alongside training that will allow students to create quality digital content. Opportunities for evangelism in the digital spaces is unlimited, and this is innovative ministry education for our contemporary culture. One of the instructors is a 2-time Emmy-winning former ESPN designer. Members of the Church of Christ could be eligible for the full tuition Jack Zorn Scholarship in order to pursue this special area of study. For more information, contact admissions at faulkner.edu. That is admissions at faulkner.edu. Faulkner University is a digital partner with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. Just hear me out. That's what my friend Jason Brightwell was saying. I can't imitate the way he delivers it, but that's what he says. Now, Jason is a member of the U.S. Marshal Fugitive Task Force team. He works with Bob Danoon. He's also the entry team leader for our SWAT team. And if your school, your home, your church, or your company needs some firearm training in security, Jason is the guy that you want to do that training for you. He's a straight-up professional and one of the best young instructors I've ever been around. But just to hear me out, that's the Jason Brightwell preamble to things that are sketchy, things that are innovative, things that are novel, things that are new, and things that might be nefarious. Just hear me out. It means you have to listen to the whole thing. Don't stop me in mid-stride. Don't come to a conclusion until you see the whole picture. So hear me out. And this is not a Jason Brightwell thing. I'm just borrowing his phrase. Just hear me out. The plan is we're going to take a hollow metal tube. We're going to stick it into your back between your ribs, and you'll feel better. So just hear me out. I was in so much pain, well, technically discomfort, I couldn't breathe. And I agreed to let a guy take a hollow metal tube and stick it between my ribs into my back and let liquid that was pressing on my lung leak out of my body. The guy doing the sticking was a medical technician. But given the right circumstances, I'd let somebody do a field thoracentesis on me with an ink pen because I was in such discomfort. There was another time, and I was in so much pain, I agreed to let them cut into my back and move stuff around. I have been in so much pain that I consented to let them cut open my abdomen, take stuff out, put stuff in, or move stuff around, and I've done that on multiple occasions. Now, it sounds pretty dramatic until you hear me out, or at least listen long enough for me to put it in context. You see, that's what surgery is. Surgery is opening up the body, sticking things into the body, taking things out, putting things in. And in some cases, it is just to give pain relief. And in some cases, it's survival. What would happen in your life if the mechanisms that dealt with pain relief and survival got combined? What if there was something in your life that combined relief from intolerable feelings and survival? Now, we haven't even talked about my ruptured disc. The thing that ruptured in my disc was smaller than the size of a match head. Your disc in your spine or your spinal column, they have a gel-like substance, and that gel-like substance stuck out. It ruptured and was touching a nerve. Now, this is not a bone spur. It was not a break or a fracture, but it was just a herniated disc. It's a little bitty piece of gel protruding out of one of the lumbar discs, and it touched a nerve. Now, that nerve somehow was connected to my inner thigh, and this thing was so small that when they fixed it, the procedure they use is called a microdiscectomy. It started when we were in Orlando, Florida. The plan was to go down there and speak and do the seminar at this church. And we're going to adventure with Rhonda and Halo Fernandez between my speaking stuff. Now, that's before they moved back home to Alabama. And so we walked on the beach, and Halo and I fished for bass in his boat. We toured the wetlands in an airboat. The wetlands, quote unquote, is created by the Water Reclamation Project in the city of Orlando, and it's overseen by a guy named Mark Sees. Well, somewhere in the weekend, that little protrusion in my back began to aggravate. It began to make my leg hurt. And I had a massage on my back. I visited a chiropractor. I slept in the floor. I did anything I could to relieve the discomfort. In fact, I preached the last time in the seminar standing in the aisle with my leg draped over the back of a pew just to give me the ability to stand up and not be in pain. So when I say that I was in pain, this was not theoretical. This is nerve pain. Now I've had ruptured intestine pain. I've had hernia pain. I've had broken bone pain. I've had blunt force trauma pain. I've had cut pain. I've had torn muscle pain. But nerve pain is its own special little demon. You see, when I stood straight up at any point, my inner thigh felt like somebody had lit it with a blowtorch and put a belt sander on it. And every time I stood up and that leg straightened out and that nerve was activated by the herniated disc, my first instinct was just to throw up. The fun part of the trip was that we had driven to Orlando and we're going to drive back. But we weren't going to drive back from Orlando to Huntsville. We're going to drive back from Orlando to Huntsville via Rome, Georgia, and spend one extra day at a volleyball tournament. So instead of being able to go straight home, I spent an extra day on the floor of a motel in Rome, Georgia, while Jackie fulfilled her coaching obligations. We finally got home late in the afternoon, 2 days later. And when we got home, we went straight to the orthopedic center's after hours emergency clinic. I've been traveling on the road for 2 days. I was unshaven. I was in sweatpants. And instead of looking like the roaming gnome, I looked like the homeless gnome. I lay in the floor at the TOC waiting to be seen. And when the doctor looked at me, he made an assessment. Middle-aged guy, in sweats, unshaven, looked like he'd been traveling. Read that as a transient. And so he looks at me and my condition and thinks, he's obviously med-seeking. So he sent me home with no pain meds. He ordered an MRI for a week later. And the results for the MRI took 4 days. Now, to their credit, once they read the MRI, I had surgery the next day, and the doctor even apologized. But I'd spent 10 days crawling around on my stomach just to go to the bathroom, and when I stood up, I would throw up. And after they cut my back open, I had instant relief and was even traveling to do other speaking engagements within the next 6 days. With that pain, and how intolerable that pain was, when somebody suggested, hey, let's make an incision in your back and you'll feel better, I absolutely, readily, instantly agreed. 4 years ago when I had the emergency surgery, the folks at Helen Keller nicked my bowels, and the result of that little leakage in my bowel created an infection on my liver. They also improperly inserted an NG tube. And then, in addition to all the things that they did wrong in the third world medicine country, uh, I had this fluid start collecting around my lungs. Once I got to Huntsville Hospital, they connected the pain in my upper back and the inability to breathe with fluid in my pleural area. Now, that's the occasion that the solution was, instead of cutting me open, they just stabbed me. They rolled me down to the place where they do the thoracentesis. That's a compound Greek word that literally means chest puncture. And the young man said, "Hey, just lean forward on this table. Just sit up in your bed and turn sideways and lean forward on this table." Now, those cute little nurses, every time they give you a shot or they put an IV in, they use cute little words like, "Hey, this is going to be a pinch. We're going to have a little sting. Brother, this is going to feel like I shot you." Wham! And without preamble, he did. He jabbed this thing into my back. He stuck the needle between my ribs into the pleural space around my lungs and drained 500 cc's of liquid from the area around my lung. Now, when you talk about being stabbed or being cut open or them going inside you and taking stuff out and moving things around, in those contexts, stabbing, cutting, opening up, once you hear me out, all those things make sense. On face value, maybe not. Can't breathe? We're going to stab you in the chest. Your guts hurt? Hey, let's unzip your abdomen and pull stuff out and maybe do a little plumbing while we're in there. But in the context of we're doing these things to make you feel better, changing the way you feel, or as a matter of survival, all those radically intrusive procedures make sense and actually sound reasonable. So if someone were to tell you, "I was in so much pain, I began to eat things, drink things, inject things, watch things, or do things to make the pain go away," and that doesn't sound so radical and unacceptable, does it? Especially if it worked, and even if it only worked temporarily, and whether we intentionally or unwittingly linked the behavior or use with the pain relief is somewhat inconsequential. They got linked. We might have done it intentionally, but they got paired, they got bonded. Just hear me out. This is not excusing it. It's not even saying it's acceptable. The point today, the message today, is just understanding the mechanism of addiction. So just hear me out. The behavior or pattern of behavior, the things that you take or you smoke or you drink or you watch or you do, that behavior became unconscious, automatic, and associated with survival. And because of the nature of it, it is difficult to change, or it feels like it's impossible to live without. You see, it's hard to live without because an attachment was created to the behavior or the drug of choice. Hey, Lonnie, what are those scars on your abdomen? Well, when the pain is intolerable, people cut me open and they put stuff in, they take stuff out. Does that hurt? Well, normally I'm asleep when it happens, but after I wake up, after I regain consciousness, there's some pain, and there's usually anywhere from 8 to 14 weeks of limited activity. My normal life is interfered with, but I'm not experiencing the pain I was in. I'm not experiencing the acute pain that I was in before they cut me open, so I'm willing to make that trade-off, and I've made that choice. One difficulty over another difficulty to get immediate relief. Now, in the instance of radical invasive surgery, the relief is typically sustainable. But even if the relief had not been permanent, you see, when my intestine ruptured, when my intestines protruded between my muscles and my skin, when my intestines got twisted and I could feel food travel across my body, the pain on each of those occasions was such that you have said, "Here, take this, drink this, inject this, or do this to relieve the pain," I would have done it, whatever it was, even if it was going to be temporary relief. You see, when someone says you're dying, and they suggest they can fix it if they cut you open. You just simply say yes, and you gladly say yes, and you say it every time. We understand surgery. We get that. It's radical and it's invasive, and the aftermath is painful, but the initial pain goes away. We understand physical therapy, but we often don't understand addiction. We don't put it in that context. We don't hear it out. You see, people who struggle with addiction experience intolerable pain, and if pain isn't the right word, because sometimes it's not actually pain, it's just intolerable feelings. And when they have this experience of intolerable feelings, they use substances or they take actions, compulsions that are designed to create feelings that they cannot have, or exterminate or eliminate feelings that they do not want. Those feelings are the ones that are intolerable. And it's not always pain as we describe pain. It's just feelings. And the feelings are not to be tolerated. They don't have to hurt. They just have to be intolerable. Feelings or thoughts, a pervasive life view that says I'm worthless, I'm trapped, I'm trash, I'm powerless, I'm broken, I'm unlovable, I'm not special, I failed, I'm a failure, I'm hated. You live with that, and you live with it every day, and you just want it to go away. You want to create a feeling you can't have, or you want to stop a feeling that you don't want to have. Now, addiction is a super complicated thing, and we're not going to explain it all in one episode of a podcast. Addiction is created by a constellation, a multiplicity of factors, a constellation of factors. It's a multi-factor phenomenon inside the brain where the reward and the control pathway gets activated either by a substance, or that control reward pathway is activated by a behavior. Now, it can be a trauma, it can be an event, it can be a thought, it can be an experience that occurs, and it gets interpreted by an impairment in judgment, decision-making, or perception, and that impairment in judgment, decision-making, or perception creates the intolerable feeling. And once that thing lasts and is pervasive, we want to do something about it. We want to modify the feeling, or we want to extinguish it. And once we find something that does it, once we find relief in a substance or a pattern of behavior or an action, that gets encoded. Encoded behaviors and thoughts are difficult to change, even when from the outside looking in, they look extreme or even pathological. You see, not only can we learn, but we relearn and we unlearn behavior, but the encoding is so strong that it's difficult to relearn or unlearn, because that encoding is so strong. It's stronger than survival because it gets encoded as survival, or at least it represents survival. And so we look at people's extreme behavior and what looks like suboptimal behavior or dangerous living, and we don't understand it. But if you understood it from the context of this is linked somehow as a survival behavior. Now, this may be a big leap for a short episode, but survival and attachment walk hand in hand. Brene Brown says shame is the fear of loss of connection. And I think go ahead and say shame is the fear of loss of attachment. And attachment is not just psychologically driven, but also physiologically driven. It's a biological expression for needs of interpersonal closeness. And once we feel abnormal, once we think I'm broken, I'm disconnected, I'm disintegrated, I don't fit, I don't belong, I'm on the outside looking in, I'm different than everybody else, I'm in a crowd, but I'm still lonely, nobody gets me. Once we feel like we've lost attachment, when that different feeling, I'm not like you and you don't like me and you wouldn't like me if you really knew me, once that becomes intolerable or pervasively chronic enough that the persistence becomes such that we need to seek relief from it, And once we find something that relieves that, that's survival, but it's also attachment. You see, a secure attachment is fostered by responsiveness. A baby cries and mom or dad walks into the room. That's the foundation of attachment. You text a friend and they text you back. That's the beginning of an attachment with that person. You invite me to go somewhere and I say yes. We're beginning to attach to each other. But in any of those examples, a failure to respond, a failure to accept, a failure to attend or attune to that call for attachment, it will have the opposite effect. You've cried out and no one came. You texted and no one responded. You invited and people said no. The disruption in or failure to create an attachment. That's what happens when things don't go our way. Well, people who are in intolerable pain, people have feelings they don't want or can't create feelings that they wish they had, that drug of choice or that behavior of choice, it always responds. It never neglects and it does not disappoint. And it creates an attachment. So the behavior is encoded. It's encoded as survival, and it gets translated as I'm attached to this drug. I'm attached to this behavior. The substance or the behavior that gets attached to the trauma becomes an attachment in and of itself. The drug or behavior of choice might be the only secure attachment in the person's entire life. Now, what would it take? What would it take for you to give up the one thing that gave you connection? What would it take for you to give up the one thing that gave you attachment? What would it take for you to give up the one thing that gave you a feeling of normalcy, even if the feeling was false or just brief? What would it take for you to give up the only thing that brought you relief from the intolerable? Understanding that mechanism may give us insight to our behavior or the behavior of others. The context of medicating the intolerable might give us the ability to look at the behaviors or people we do not understand and just simply hear them out and understand. Once we learn that they are dealing with thoughts and feelings and perceptions that they cannot tolerate. You see, if I could see that substance, if I could see that behavior and recognize the substance or the behavior is not the problem, but rather the symptom of a much deeper problem, a pain that feels like it cannot be tolerated, if we could just understand that, it just might allow us to see in ourselves or see in other people. It just might allow us to be, if not more tolerant, at least more understanding of those kinds of behaviors. I'm not attempting to excuse. I'm not attempting to minimize. I'm not attempting to justify addictive behavior. I just wanted to try to explain it so that we might just understand those mechanisms together. So just hear me out. Using the tool of shortwave radio, World Christian Broadcasting literally covers the world every day with the gospel. They use 2 large curtain antennas. One is located in Anchor Point, Alaska, and the other in Madagascar. They send out messages that are recorded at their international home in Franklin, Tennessee. They make available 40 hours of broadcast every day. The broadcasts are made in English, Chinese, Russian, Spanish, Portuguese, Korean, English for Africa, and Arabic. They would love for your group to visit them. You can bring your ladies group, your youth group, or your men's group. Just give them a call at 615-371-8707, 615-371-8707, or you can go to 3W's and a dot, worldchristian.org, find the Donate Here button, and make a financial contribution to support this work that literally covers the world every day with the gospel. World Christian Broadcasting in cooperation with Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure.